unfortunately, we have to inform you that once again, there are allegations being put out there strongly by the Fourth Estate, suggesting that, a contract that the PPA awarded to Busy Internet for the provision of Wi-Fi in senior high schools is a problem because there was no tax or SNIT clearance certificates, which are mandatory requirements for any company to bid for a government contract. Now, between 2018 and 2022, Busy Internet owed tax and SNIT of about 17 million. Almost 3 times the amount that government pays to Busy Internet each month for what Fourth Estate describes as non-existent internet connection in the schools. Now, some former employees have been speaking to the Fourth Estate. Let's hear them.
We were indebted to GRA staff SNIT contributions were also in the red. Even Tier 2 pension were also in the red. And most government contracts requires that for you to qualify, your obligations to these statutory agencies should be on point. You need a tax clearance certificate. You need a clearance letter from SNIT to virtually indicate that you are in good standing. And as at that time, I can say for a fact that we didn't.
That we didn't have dispensation letter, we didn't have withholding tax certificate. It means that we've not been paying our taxes. And I'm so 100% sure that at that time, we were so back in payment for some of these taxes, and we've not paid. To the point that GRA has come to our office to close us before, and they have done that 2 occasions. And we're still having payment plan with them to pay, which we weren't handling because we didn't have the money. It was during the process of we starting to do the installation. That was when I got to hear that, okay, initially the contract was this amount, 3 point something, has changed to 6. The contract now is not serving its purpose. Why? Because it is supposed to give secondary schools internet access. But as we stand now, I can tell you for a fact about 60% of these secondary schools don't have internet. So if it's not working, why is the government still paying for this service? Why is the company Busy Internet, if it is still in operation, why are they still invoicing Ministry of Education for it to be?
Yeah, so those are excerpts from the work done by the Fourth Estate, but that's not all, okay? So every month, the government was also supposed to pay over 6 million Ghana cedis, 6.3 million to be precise, to Busy Internet for maintenance and internet services, all right, over the 5-year period of this contract. Busy Internet was not only able to secure the 84 million Ghana cedi government contract, it was awarded the contract on a sole sourcing arrangement. And you know that every time that happens, you know, the questions arise, rightfully so. In May 2023, the PPA approved an increment in the monthly recurrent cost of the contract, moving it from 6.3 million to 11.5 million Ghana cedis. The PPA also approved the transfer of the contract from Busy Internet to Lifted Logistics. Okay, so there was some sort of change in, business entity there. Procurement Consultant Agyeman Sarpong has been assessing this, and he says, look, no company can win a contract in Ghana without meeting these basic requirements. Don't take it from me. Let's listen to Collins himself.
You have the tax clearance, Senate clearance. You need to be registered with the Ghana Registrar General. You need to have a registration certificate as a business or going a business concern. If you miss any of this mandatory requirement, nobody should give you a contract. You can't win.
Yeah, that's Collins Agyeman Sarpong. We'll be hearing more from him as the conversation unfolds. Now, that's not all, okay? The PPA approved the transfer of the 84 million Ghana cedis Wi-Fi contract to Lifted Logistics in May 2023, okay? But this happened to be 10 months before the NCA approved a conditional license for internet provision for Lifted Logistics, okay, in February 2024. So for 10 months, they operated without this license. Despite winning the contract, Busy Internet has failed to provide internet services to many schools. The government, however, continued to pay for the internet in some of these schools that have not had service for as long as 24 months. 24 months in a row, no internet, but they've been paid. The Ministry of Education has refused to provide information on how much it has paid Busy Internet, but parliamentary records indicate that Lifted Logistics received 56 million Ghana cedis between January and September 2023. All right, well, listen, let's find out as much as we can about this. Evans Aziamor-Mensah is a reporter with the Fourth Estate. He is on the team that did this work. Evans, it's good to have you. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you, Kojo.
We will also be hearing from a former Busy Internet employee. We're going to call him Ni for the purpose of this conversation, since his identity must be protected. Ni, thank you for joining us. Good morning. All right, we'll be hearing from Ni. Also, Divine is Senior Programs Manager at Africa Education Watch. They, of course, are a think tank that has been looking into this situation of the provision of internet and has some perspectives there. Agyeman Sarpong, you heard him earlier. He's a procurement consultant and he's been sharing his expert opinion on this deal. Dr. Clement Apaak, no stranger to our show, Deputy Ranking Member of Parliament's Education Committee, will be joining us as well. I believe he's going to be on the phone. But let's get started with Evans, because there's a lot here. You uncovered a lot. We'll let you walk us through the main facts of what you discovered, okay?
Okay. So, Kojo, we got to know that in 2019, the government signed a contract with Busy Internet to provide internet services to senior high schools and Ghana Education Service offices across the country. And the contract amount for installation of the devices was 84 million Ghana cedis. And then we also got to know that the government was going to be paying 6.3 million Ghana cedis every month for maintenance and for internet across these offices and the schools. And so we got curious. We wanted to understand exactly how efficient this service has been since it was put together in 2019. So we started doing investigations and we realized that some of the schools do not have the internet. And despite not having the internet, the Ministry of Education, for instance, continued to pay money for these services. So when I went to Laboni Senior High School and Accra Academy, for instance, they were on private internet. But to our surprise, the government was paying for these months that they were on private internet. And in fact, as we speak, Laboni Senior High School, they are still on private internet. But the government continues to pay for them. So we asked the question, if these schools are now on the internet being provided by Busy Internet, why are we continuing to pay money for these services? And the Busy Internet denied, but because we had evidence to show that indeed these schools were off, we also presented evidence to them. So when I sent the list of schools to them, about 53 schools to them to confirm whether they were off at the time, they mentioned to me that Busy Internet has stopped operating, and so they couldn't provide data to contradict whatever information we give to them. So that was what they said. Yeah. Meanwhile, Busy Internet and Lifted Logistics are owned by one person. All right. And right before that, we got to know that even though the contract was awarded to Busy Internet, it was transferred to Lifted Logistics from January 2020. So whatever amount we're paying Busy was actually going to Lifted Logistics because Busy Internet was owing. And so the former employees went to court to get Ganashi orders on its bank account.
Busy Internet was owing what?
Was owing in taxes, salaries, and was owing third-party contractors that was working for Busy. So, when they won the contract, they contracted MTN, Airtel Tigo, and another company called Yaklik to provide these services for them because they didn't have the capacity to deploy all the services across the country. And so while they were doing the work for Busy was not paying them. And so sometimes they are forced to go to court. For instance, the former employees who were sacked without their SNET and their salary arrears were forced to go to court to secure Ganashi orders so that they can get the money from the bank account of Busy Internet. So to outmask the system, they now transfer all the payments to Lifter Logistics so that they can get their money secured in that account. And that was done without approval from the PPA, as we only got to know about that in 2023, 3 years after the contract was being implemented. And then we also got to know that despite not meeting some of these requirements, Busy got the contract on a sole source basis.
Right.
All right. And we went further to investigate the issue. And then we got to know that some of the schools, for instance, when I spoke to the headmaster of Opoku Senior High School, he mentioned to me that the absence of the internet in the schools was affecting teaching and learning, because since government was deploying these smart schools projects and the digitalization project in the schools, laptops and the tablets and all that, since there's no internet, it was going to affect the students and the teaching and learning in the schools. And so if we are paying for these schools, meanwhile we do not have the internet, it means that we are wasting our money. And then further in 2023, when we started investigating the story, we asked Busy if they had secured approval from PPA to transfer the contract to Lifter Logistics. The Busy guy that I spoke to told me that indeed when they bought Busy in 2018, they got the license from that particular buyout, which we later got to know that was a lie, because the PPA only transferred the contract to Lifter Logistics in 2023 May. And then also we got to know that in February this year, that was when Busy internet license was now transferred to Lifter Logistics conditionally. All right. Which meant that at the time PPA gave the contract to Lifter Logistics, it was not a licensed entity. Meanwhile, according to procurement, when I spoke to the procurement expert, they mentioned to me that for a company to win a contract, it must be licensed by the industry head, which is the NCA at the time. And NCA didn't license Lifter Logistics. So how was he able to get the contract that was signed to Busy at the time? And I also got to know that the contract sum was increased from 6.3 million Ghana cedis to 11.5 million Ghana cedis, even though government says that it was prorated, and so if the service is not delivered, they won't have to pay for all that money. We got to know that most of these schools that we visited, at least 53, and then some of the schools that Africa Education Watch had gone to a year before our investigation, showed that these internet services in the schools were off, but government continued to pay for them. So these are some of the key findings from our investigations.
In case you just joined us, we're talking about a contract signed between the Ministry of Education and Busy Internet to provide internet services to over 1,000 sites across the country, 700 of them being senior high schools and about 300 of them being Ghana Education Service offices and locations, administrative locations. And we are learning from the Fourth Estate investigation that, this project was actually very poorly delivered upon, but also that the company that was awarded the contract perhaps was not qualified to be given that contract. Evans Aziamor-Mensah is briefing us on it. We'll be hearing from other stakeholders in a moment. But Evans, in a very quick fire way, we're going to establish some facts, very simple facts. First of all, which schools did you visit? What did you find?
So I visited in Accra. I visited the Accra Academy, Laboni Senior High School, St. Mary's in Kolegono. I visited the school at Kimbu. I visited the schools in Adan as well. And I realized that most of these schools, at the time I visited, it was only Kimbu Senior High School that had internet service available and it was working. All right. The others did not work. And outside of Accra, we went to Opoku, we went to Wenchi Methodist SHS and the Istikama Senior High School. We went to a school also in the Techiman Senior High School as well. And most of these services were off. They were not having internet. And in fact, the coordinators in the schools were supposed to serve as liaison officers between Busy and the schools to ensure that there was internet service available. On their platform, we got to know that they've been complaining of the absence of service, but Busy did not really attend to their concerns that they've raised, Okay. And so at the time, they even got infuriated when Busy operators were asking them how about the efficiency of the internet service, and they told them that you are the operators and you should know whether internet service is off or not. So these are some of the findings from the
Now, you reported that the ministry actually paid for specific schools that didn't have internet when you checked.
Yeah.
Give us those specific schools.
So Laboni Senior High School has been off for almost 24 months. Accra Academy Senior High School. In fact, for Accra, it's the old students that were paying for internet service at the time that we even went to the schools. All right? But government was paying for this school. Then when you talk about the Wenchi Methodist Senior High School, Pokuare at a point, and about 53 schools that we visited, these schools were off, except Kimbu.
Right.
That was on at the time we went there.
Okay.
You know.
What did the ministry say to you about this?
So when I spoke to them, they mentioned that the services were prorated, which meant that they do not have to pay for a service if it is not delivered at the end of the month. So there's a monitoring service in place where they have a committee that have to verify whether an internet service was delivered. And then also, up until September 2023, there was no virtual platform to monitor. So they now use a virtual platform to monitor whether an internet service was on or off at a particular school at a point in time. So that's why they started monitoring the service. Despite these measures, the government insists that they have not been paying for this school. Meanwhile, so when I requested information from them to give me the list of schools they have been paying for since 2020, they gave me the list. But what they failed to do was that they failed to give me the amount of money they've paid for each of these schools.
Right.
And then from the list of the schools they give to us, that was when we were able to tell that the schools that we visited within this period that were off were being paid for, even though they refused to give us the amount of money they paid for these schools.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Okay. So, obviously, you tried to find out the explanation that Lifted Logistics had for all of this. What did they say?
So when I spoke to them, they also denied that they were not taking money for schools that were off. But at least because we have the list from the ministry that shows that indeed these schools were being paid for, we were able to challenge that particular assertion. And they said we should send a list to them to work on it. So I sent the list of the schools that we went to. I sent to Lifted Logistics. And then they got back to me that they do not have data on these schools that we have given to them within the periods that we went to the schools because Busy has stopped operation. But could you bear in mind that Busy and Lifted belong to the same person? And Lifted was executing the contract right from the word go. And so there was no way we could buy
In
the
fact,
argument
Lifted bought Busy, am I
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So,
in
so
2018.
if Busy doesn't exist,
Yeah.
it's because it is owned by Lifted Logistics.
Yes.
So their explanation to you that Busy doesn't exist, so they don't have the information.
Yeah.
Lifted has bought that information.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes, that's
okay.
true. And Kojo, when you go to the register of companies, even though they said Busy does not exist or is cease to operate and all that, Busy is still a company on its registrar. And Busy has not filed its tax returns for the past 8 years. That means that 4 years or 3 years before he won the contract, and all this year after the contract, Busy has not filed its tax returns. And then file its annual filings at the register of companies. Same as Lifted, that has not done it for 2 years.
Interesting.
Has not filed the annual filings for 2 years at the register of companies. And so the argument that Busy does not exist and so could not give us the data on which schools were off at a point in time, I mean, it's not
Yeah.
it's an argument that we can buy.
Okay. Now the PPA also has a role to play here.
Yeah.
Tell us about their approval for an increase in the monthly recurring cost. Now, just for those of you who just joined us, the contract itself is worth 84 million Ghana cedis, okay, for 1,000 sites to be connected to the internet. So that means on average about 84,000 Ghana cedis per site to connect each site to the internet, right? 84,000 Ghana cedis each. But that's not it. Every month, according to the contract, they were to also be paid 6.3 million Ghana cedis for maintenance and the provision of data.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. But that amount was increased in May 2023. Tell us about that.
So we got a letter that shows that in May 2023, the ministry wrote to PPA for an increment in the monthly recurrent cost of the contract. And the argument they made was that there was an issue with exchange rates and VAT increment and inflation. And so they need to increase the monthly recurrent cost of the contract.
Right.
So it jumped from 6.3 million Ghana cedis to 11.5 million Ghana cedis. That's almost like 100% jump in the contract. The monthly
6.3 to 11.5.
All right. And so it was at that approval that the PPO also approved the change or the transfer of the contract from Busy Internet to Lifted Logistics. Meanwhile, this company had been executing the contract right from January 2020. You know.
Okay.
And
Now-
like I said, could you Lifted Logistics only got a conditional license from the NCA this year in February. So that means 10 months ago, when it was given the contract to execute, it didn't have a license to operate as a licensed internet service provider in Ghana.
So they executed this contract for 10 years without a license. And
So for
recently
10
got
months.
10 months.
Yeah.
Sorry, forgive my mistake.
That's
For
even the
10 months
official
without a license.
during the official approval. But what we know is that Lifted had been executing the contract right from January 2020 when it was signed.
But at least from
because
the
the
point where
monies that were paid to Lifted Logistics.
but to avoid confusion, at least from the point where the contract for Lifted
Yeah.
Logistics was approved, they actually operated this contract for 10 months
Yeah.
without a license.
Yes.
Okay. Have you reached out to the PPA
Yes.
for them to explain?
Yes, we
these
reached out to
things?
them, and they refused to speak to us on the issues that we have concerning the contract. Yeah.
They refused.
Yeah. We've made follow-up calls. We went to the offices and all that, but they've not made any effort to speak to us.
Okay. Do we have Nee on the line? Nee is a former Busy Internet employee. He joins us to give a bit more insight. Nee, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank
How
you
are
for
you?
your time. We're very well, thanks. Now, Nee, you said that at the time Busy Internet won the Wi-Fi contract, you were owed SNIT Tier 1 and Tier 2 contributions. You also said the company owed taxes, so they couldn't have provided a GRA or SNIT clearance certificate, which, are basic requirements to win a contract. Tell us more about this situation.
Okay. So at the time that Busy Internet won this contract, what was pertaining was that SNIT has already taken us to court. We were going to court on these Tier 1, Tier 2 payments and other contributions that are supposed to be paid to employees. So in any sense, I don't know how SNIT will give clearance that payment of employees' contributions is up to date, and we need to go ahead and get any contract from the government. On top of that, we have been locked up by GRA on multiple times for non-payment of our income taxes and all those things. We were locked up when we were at Circle. We moved to Una Homes, we were locked up there. And then we moved to Jobulu. Somehow opposite Information for Rights Bill, that office, we moved there and we're locked up there too. So there is no way we can say that at that particular moment we had any clearance from SNIT and that of GRA.
So let me ask you, what's the current situation? Has the company paid your SNIT?
Because of the court issues, they started paying some, but for my records, Tier 2 has not been paid at all. Nothing about Tier 2 has been paid.
So what action are you taking against the company right now?
Okay, so we employees of Busy Internet, we want to state it clearly that we are not in any way fighting anybody except Lifted Logistics and Aguila. Now, this gentleman, let me also bring some points to bear in this whole issue. Now, from the beginning of the contract, we were given mobilization fee of about 20 million. I can tell you for a fact that this amount of money did not stay in our account for a minute. Hoppe and his team came running to us and demanded that we transfer that money to him. And that money was transferred to him. At the blind side of our CEO and MD, they created another Busy bank account, and all funds were transferred to that Busy bank account. So originally, the money that was supposed to be coming to Busy Internet account stopped coming, and it was diverted through the other Busy account. So we had no knowledge of whatever amount has been paid to this guy. Now, let me ask, if you buy a company, you take on its assets and you take on its liabilities, right? But this gentleman bought Busy Internet, used its assets to work, and refused to take care of its liabilities. As I'm talking to you now, a lot of employees' salaries are in arrears, and they have not been paid. And I am so sad to inform you that we have lost 4 members of our ex-employees already to this same issue, because people were sick, people had asthma, they don't have money to pay for their bills, and some of them died through it. And even to date, you cannot in any way get through to this man. He has vowed not to pay our salary rates, and that is what we are after. You know something? Some of our employees are in court with this guy, and he has and he has sold off all the assets of Busy Internet. So even if you go to court and you win judgment against Busy Internet, you cannot execute that judgment on anything because all the assets, landed properties of Busy Internet has been sold.
You mentioned
you see the dilemma in which we find ourselves.
Yes, I do. You mentioned the name of the owner of this company. Tell us again.
Hoppe Ojo. Hoppe Omotolaya Ojo or something like that.
Right. Okay. Let me confirm with Evans. I mean, in your investigations, what name did you come across as the owner of this company?
Hoppe Omotayo Ojo.
Okay.
He is there.
All right. Yeah. I want to bring in Divine because Divine is a senior programs manager at Africa Education Watch. Now, the reason why it's important to speak to Divine and Africa Education Watch is because they've been looking into this matter as well. Okay, so we can compare notes a little bit. Okay, Divine, thank you for your time. Good morning. Do we have Divine on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, so listen, based on the findings of the Fourth Estate, would you say, looking at this contract, that we're getting value for money?
All right, good morning again. Good morning. You're listening. Well, when you look at our own investigation or study that we did in July...
Divine, I think we have to move you away from the radio if possible, okay? Because we're getting some feedback. If we can switch off that radio.
Hello, you?
Yes, it's much better now.
Is it better?
Yes, much better. Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So we also did a study in July last year where we sampled about 150 senior high schools and 138 of them responded, of which we noticed that 107 of them mentioned that they were not having functioning Wi-Fi. They had Wi-Fi installed in their school, but they were not functioning, and that translates to about 78% of the schools that responded. And even if you look at that, if you don't want to go into the case of the Fourth Estate, you want to look at that alone, you can safely conclude that we didn't have value for money, especially for the amount spent on installation, 59.9 million Ghana cedis that have been used to install Wi-Fi in 117 senior high schools or so. And if our sample tells that for some schools, even for over a year, and some of them for 6 months, and some of them, they mentioned that right after installation, within 3 months, their Wi-Fi have been down. And some for a year have not been having functioning Wi-Fi. Tells you that even the amount we have spent for installation alone, we have not had value for it. And then if you want to take the work of the Fourth Estate, where they are establishing that contrary to the terms of the contract that prescribe monthly payment to the service provider, if a downtime service is up or exceeding half of the amount, payment should not be made to them, but yet the ministry went ahead to make payment. It also tells you that the monthly recurring amount that we have to pay, that's about 2.6 million Ghana cedis. That aspect too, there's no value for money in that aspect. It has been our situation when we did our study. So I'm glad that the Fourth Estate actually took a step further to establish that there have been instances of some schools that services are not being provided in their school, yet their invoices have been validated and payments effected. I read the letter from the Ministry of Education, and I do not see how it actually addressed some of these issues because the president did not clarify whether indeed the allegation from the Fourth Estate that we have mentioned names of schools. And I think if you look at it, about 46 schools have been mentioned. Specifically, they mentioned Accra Academy, Labone Senior High School, Budget Senior High School, Praha, Community Day, SHS, and just to mention a few. Some of these schools have been provided in their investigation, reach through the entire press by the ministry, and you don't see a line that says, no, it is not accurate that these services have not been working in this school, but we have effected payment. We have not denied it. And tells that they have the pace to answer. And also, it brings into question the effectiveness of the work done by the validation committee. If you look at the contract, supposed to have a validation committee that will validate the invoices from the various schools before payment is expected, made up of Ministry of Education, NACA, GES, BV Internet, and the National Communication Authority. These 5 entities made up the validation committee. But again, we're also learning that aside this particular established body, at the ministry itself, there's another body established which have not been mentioned in the contract to also validate what this 5 million committee may have done. So if we still have all these monitoring mechanisms in place, but yes, schools that are not having services, payments have been effected on their behalf, then we need to question the effectiveness of this committee. And that's why if you look at our policy brief we did on this in July 2023, we specifically requested from the Auditor General to carry out performance audit report into the entire project, the Wi-Fi project in our senior high school, the 770 senior high schools. My understanding is that the Auditor General is carrying out the investigation, and they may have even concluded it's left to be published. So it's very important that we follow up on that to actually know what that particular audit may have also revealed. But on the whole, the answer to your question is that we are not having money for the services that we ask this internet service to provide in terms of the amount spent on installation, and then also on the face of the fact that service and money is being paid for services not rendered to some of the school. We are not having that for money.
Okay. Now, this is a serious thing because, look, this whole, provision of Wi-Fi in schools, it's a big part of the government's Smart Schools project and even the larger digitization agenda, in SHSs. So the impact of this contract not being executed properly is huge. What should be done going forward?
But it's huge because we have several interventions outside the Smart School project, and then which actually includes the one student, one tablet. We also have concepts like the iBox and then iCampus in our senior high school. Either the iBox or the iCampus actually needs to be internet driven. So without internet, they can't even access that device. So it will be affecting teaching and learning. Teachers will have to depend on it to carry out researches online to prepare their lesson notes or lesson plan for teaching and learning. And so the effect will be enormous, as I can just imagine, even on administrative work. Going forward, there's a need for government to reconsider the contract with busy internet. That's very important. And I'm glad, reading from the press out from the ministry, they have indicated that they are considering that option where schools that may not be having effectiveness in services that the business internet or the service provider is rendering, they want to reconsider their contractual agreement with them. That is very important. We made similar call in our policy brief published in July 2023 that, look, if we are not having value for money, we cannot let the service provider to be taking money for things that they are not doing. There's a need for the contract to be reviewed. And my understanding also is that August 2023 last year, they've reviewed parts of the contract. That's where you realize that there have been some increments. You mentioned an increment in the recurring costs. It's because they reviewed in August 2023 and because of prevailing cost of living and then also inflation, they increased the recurring cost. But for us, it must not be that the review necessary is looking at whether the amount being paid is enough to meet the current prevailing cost of living. It should also be that if we are reviewing, is the service provider doing what is expected of it? If they are not doing that, then if we have to take them away from the contract, I think there's a provision for that can be established to look at that. And I think that's what the ministry is basing on to review the contract to ensure that schools that are not having internet connection, busy internet, will not continue to be rendering service to them. But beyond us pointing fingers to the service provider, there's a need to demand accountability from the Ministry of Education itself, because if you have established all these monitoring mechanisms and yet you still continue to make payments to the service provider for services that they have not rendered in school, then we need to question you, how effective is your own monitoring mechanism? And therefore, this particular audit that we requested or demanded that the Auditor General carries out actually look at how they can demand accountability from the Ministry of Education, where there are clear indications that anomalies are being committed. Then there's a need to demand that if whatever sanction that is applicable should be applied to them. But most importantly, the need for us to ensure that the services are effective in our schools. And I personally do not see Busy Internet in a position to provide effective internet services in our school. How they ended up winning this particular contract even beats my imagination. For the very fact that we have other similar service providers in the country that could have provided superior services. Actually, it's my imagination. And if it is possible, I am not a procurement expert. If it's possible for us to reconsider the contract to ensure that a better service provider is brought in to ensure effectiveness in service provision, I think it will be very useful to ensure that we have functional Wi-Fi in our senior high schools.
Today's conversation is about an 84 million Ghana cedi contract that has been given to Busy Internet, which of course is being questioned because according to an investigation by the Fourth Estate, this company shouldn't even have got the contract to begin with. They owe government tax, they owe SNIT contributions for their staff. And in addition to all of that, after getting the contract, which also came with a 6.3 million Ghana cedi monthly data and maintenance fee, in spite of that, several schools are not receiving internet. Some of them for 24 months in a row didn't receive internet service, but were paid. I mean, Busy Internet was paid for providing internet to those schools. We are going to get to the bottom of this and understand exactly what happened. We've been joined by Kwasi Kwarteng, who's a spokesperson at the Education Ministry. We'll be hearing more from him in a moment. Kwasi, good morning and thank you for making the time. Okay. But before that, let's speak to Collins Agyeman Sarpong. Mr. Agyeman Sarpong is a procurement expert, consultant in the area of procurement. Mr. Agyeman Sarpong, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Kwajo.
So, of course, you've listened to the findings of the Fourth Estate in this contract business. Now, this is a company that did not have a GRA or SNIT clearance certificate. They could not have had GRA or SNIT clearance certificates. Preliminarily, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I've listened to it. If all what Fourth Estate has found out in terms of the GRA certification, SNIT certification, and what we call industry-related certification, that is the NCA certification, and all that, then the question will be, what did the Education Ministry see before even writing to PPA for a single source? Because we have something we call mandatory requirements, and we look at the mandatory requirement at what we call preliminary stage, when preliminary responsiveness, when we are doing tender evaluation. And that one is what we look at. The company must be registered with the registrar of company, that's the registrar general. You need to have a certificate that is valid. You should also have a valid GRA certificate, meaning you are tax compliant. You should also have a SNIT certification, meaning you take care of your employees and all. Then we have the industry related. So when it is work
you have to have a certificate from Western Housing certificate showing the class in terms of D1, D2 and all for construction, and K1, K2 for electrical and all. That's from Western Housing certification. And even you need to get labor certificate as a contractor. Okay, so that one will be industry. When it comes to IT related, you are supposed to have a certificate from National Communication Authority that you are supposed to deal in that area. So you cannot even sell laptops and other things in Ghana without being certified by NCA, internet and all. So we look at all these, and this certification, if you miss one, you wouldn't even be moved to the next stage. Even we have something we call major deviation, and you need to even, if we want to help you, we need to call you to bring it. If not, when we give you time. So it will beg for a lot of questions if this internet did not have, even with the GRA, you can move to the next level. Okay? And there is a spirit and behind some of this requirement. At times, some of us, we ask, why is somebody giving you a lower price, but you disqualify that person because the person is not bringing tax certificate, and you go for somebody with tax certificate who is going to charge you higher? There's a reason for it. You know that the Commissioner General can stop anybody who is doing business who is not tax compliant. So if you go ahead, like what is happening now, the GRA can stop whichever company that have been given this contract to stop the work. And therefore, it means that the person cannot work in the country. Snake, your workers can, and I've worked with some organization where a vendor, a supplier of service was called to a snake because he wasn't paying his tax, snake contribution for their staff, right? We terminated that contract immediately. It wasn't part of our agenda, but once we heard in the news that that company wasn't paying Senate for their workers, we terminated that contract. So it begs for a lot of questions if these guys didn't have all this and they still got the contract.
Now, tell us about this licensing situation and why it's important. Why is it important for the NCA to grant a license to a company before they can do this sort of business?
You heard that recently. We heard that the whale or the shark killed some fiber optic, whatever, under the sea. You saw what happened in the country.
Yeah.
Communication, everything went wrong for the entire country for about a week. So there's a risk. So the NCA need to certify whether the service provider, whatever they have the license, are they registered, where are they terminating their whatever. They need to know to see, and again we have the cyber security issues. So NCA, they are mandated to check all this because look, if a service provider, internet service provider, comes and they are not having certificate, they are the right people. Do you know where your information is going? These are schools. For all you know, there are some people in some Azerbaijan somewhere looking at whatever we are doing. So NCA needs to certify this company that, look, guys, this system, that equipment, it doesn't work here in Ghana. And even with sustainability, there are a lot of emissions that all these electronic gadgets that we use, okay, are emitting. Okay, so it is NCA mandate to make sure that everything, which equipment are you using? The people
Your call has been put on hold. Please wait.
Which internet provider are you using outside Ghana and all? You, the procurement expert, you wouldn't know. You don't know when there's something there and it's emitting something. You don't understand. So please, go to the authority, get that certificate. Once you bring it, I pass you to the next level. So it begs for a lot of questions why we will contract somebody who was not certified with by NCA and we give them the contract. No.
Now, at some point after winning the contract, Busy Internet transferred it to Lifted Logistics, okay, because Lifted Logistics bought Busy Internet in November 2018. Now, this is interesting. From a procurement point of view, is it regular for such a thing to happen without PPA approval, the contract being transferred to another entity?
Okay. I saw the PPA letter giving the approval from the transfer. Yes, in procurement, when you're giving somebody a contract and the person is unable to do the contract, they need to come to you and say that, look, I am subcontracting this aspect of my work, or this work, I cannot do it. So the transfer shouldn't be at the behest of the contract, the contractor. They should just tell you, the principal, I mean the Ghana Education Service, that, my boss, this contract, we cannot continue. Then they will take back the contract and now go back and re-award it.
Right.
However, if they even told it, okay, we are transferring this thing to these people because we know that they have the capacity, is the Ministry of Education that need to also do their due diligence and say that, okay, these guys are good, let's sit down, renegotiate, and do a new contract to cover the new arrangement, but not a supplier or contractor or a vendor just, from college, okay, I've won this contract, could you come and take it and go and deliver it? No. You need to go to the principal and say, okay, I cannot do it, I am recommending. So you really have to recommend that, okay, I'm not doing it, but there's another competing organization, I recommend them, you can speak to them, and you move from there. So there shouldn't be, I have transferred, just like that from a supplier to, no, even with subcon, when let's say you are building, right, and you've gotten all the contracts for electrical, for mechanical, for painting, plumbing, and all that. When you are bringing a new contractor for maybe electrical, you need to inform the principal that, okay, boss, I am subcontracting, let's say 20% of the entire work to this company. And what we need to do is do proper due diligence of that subcontractor before you tell them, go ahead and work with this contractor, or go ahead and work with this electrical or mechanical contractor. It is not you who will go and bring the people and do work for you, unless maybe it is a turnkey contract where everything is assumed that you are delivering everything. But even that, you still have to inform me if you are bringing a subcontractor to deliver some aspect of the contract. So you cannot just sit there and transfer contracts without the proper due diligence.
That's interesting. Okay, so all right, let's conclude with this. If the cost of the contract has to be changed, which we know that the monthly renewable costs was changed from 6.3 million to 11.5 million. If this has to happen while the contract is being executed, what process must be followed to do that?
Okay, so I saw the letter from PPA, which was definitely, you see, in the law, we have section 87. We call it modification. That clause says that anytime you are working and you are going to vary the contract, meaning increment, when there's increment, and it is more than 10% of the original contract, what you need to do is to write a report and go through the approval process that you went through initially. So I saw that because the initial one, they received the single source approval from PPA, They went back to PPA for PPA to approve. So that one, they have killed the process. However, I am a procurement expert and I'm still practicing. We are practitioners. We are calling for amendment of our law so that we move that approval of single source and restricted from PPA. Because the way it is applied in Ghana, no, single source is not a wrong method. Restricted is not a wrong method. It has a reason. But the way Ghanaians we see it, once PPA gives us approval, it becomes an open check. And it's in the law that once PPA gives approval for single source, it goes straight to contracting. So people find all sort of reasons to write to PPA. Once they get approval, they come and mess up at their entity. So some of us are calling for total amendment where we remove the approval of restricted tendering and single source from PPA.
Right.
There is this body called the UNCITRA, United Nations Commission on Trade Laws, international trade laws. They are mandated by UN to harmonize all international trade laws for which procurement law is passed. They have a procurement process or requirement where single source, restricted tendering is in there. It's not approved by you, the entity head. If you are a man, you just apply your single source. Then later, PPA will come and audit you. Did you see the PPA letter? At the last bottom, this paragraph is always there in their approval. Kindly make sure that your documentations are done well for future audit and tax purposes.
Yeah.
Once PPA puts that, they have removed themselves from all these things that are going on within the entity's place. We can't go and jail anybody in PPA.
Yeah.
Because in the law has mandated them to approve or disapprove. So they are doing their what? Legally mandated work. So PPA approves, and then they go to the entity and mess up the whole process. What due diligence did PPA do for them to give the approval? What due diligence did the entity, I'm talking about Ghana Education Service, what did they do? Before they said that transfer from busy to anointed to this to that. So now the entity is now hiding behind PPA approval.
Yeah.
And you cannot, as soon as you go for audit at the entity, you just go there, first thing they'll flash you with the PPA approval.
Yeah.
And once, we sit on the entity tender committee, once they receive the approval from PPA, everybody has become weak. The regulator has approved. What else you, the professional, would you say? Because the law has mandated PPA to approve.
Yeah.
So some of us are calling for amendment of that. Then we remove the restricted and single source approval to the entities themselves, so that all the tests and the PPA themselves can come at them.
Yeah.
But now the entity is covered because you say that we got the approval from the authority, and therefore, you can't do anything.
Yeah, we get it.
Because PPA, you cannot arrest anybody from PPA.
Of course. Thank you very much for explaining these things to us, Mr. Collins, Agyeman Sarpong. Now, we are going to hear from the Education Ministry. They are going to help us understand this from their perspective. But before that, let's hear from Dr. Clement Apaak. He's Deputy Ranking Member of Parliament's Education Committee. Dr. Apaak, let me ask you this. Did this contract come before the Education Committee in Parliament?
Kojo, can I plead with you to increase the volume?
Certainly.
Your voice is a bit faint.
We apologize. Can you hear me now?
Well, I will strain myself to respond appropriately.
We apologize. We're trying to make it as loud and clear as possible. So I'm asking you, did this contract come before the Education Committee in Parliament?
Well, first of all, let me say a good morning to you, to my co-panelists, as well as the good people of Ghana who are listening to us. The short answer is no. But to the short answer is some explanation. As somebody who has an interest in the educational sector, and as the deputy ranking member on the education committee, I have followed matters to do with government's announced policy to provide free Wi-Fi for public secondary schools, public colleges of education, the district directorates of education around the country, as well as the regional directorates of education across the country. I did so because the NPP government in its 2016 manifesto had indicated that it will provide this service free to the aforementioned institutions. My checks indicate that it was sometime in 2019 that a contract was signed as per the then Minister for Education and the current Minister for Communication and Digitalization when they appeared before Parliament's Appointments Committee to be vetted for appointments to serve in Akufo-Addo Bawumia government for the second term. Now, I had challenged an assertion that was made by the current flag bearer of the MPP, who was then the vice president, to the effect that as of 2020 October, 80% of public senior high schools in Ghana had been connected to the internet. And as you would expect me to do, I filed a series of questions to the Minister for Education seeking information with regards to this policy. As I speak to you today, these questions were filed in 2021. I am yet responses from the minister or his representative. And the reason why I filed those questions was because as a member of the Education Committee, we had not seen a contract. We didn't know the company that government had awarded the contract to. We didn't know the terms and conditions of that contract. We didn't know the processes by which the selected company or companies were selected and awarded the contracts. So I felt it was my responsibility to seek this information from the minister, since government through the minister had not volunteered to bring this contract and even this policy to the Education Committee for even informational purposes and to even ensure that government assisted us as an oversight committee in matters to do with education. So as we speak, if not for the benevolence of the Fourth Estate, I would never have become aware that the contract that government signed was a 5-year contract valued at 84 million Ghana cedis with a recurrent component at the time at 6.3 million Ghana cedis. So that is the situation as far as the Education Committee and Parliament is concerned with regards to what obviously is turning out to be a scandal with very serious implications.
Yeah. So now that we know these details of this contract and how it was awarded, what can Parliament do?
Well, you know, I have always been a proactive advocate but I've raised this issue on several occasions on various media platforms. I remember I challenged government to even provide us with a list of the schools and institutions it claimed were benefiting from this free Wi-Fi policy and its implementation. Having failed to do that, even before we rose in Parliament, I remember I briefed the parliamentary press when I became aware of the company that was awarded the contract, the value of the contract in Parliament. So what we will do now, given the information that is available, is to activate immediate processes to seek accountability, because it is not right, it is not acceptable that the taxpayers' monies will be doled out to a company to provide a service that it is not providing, and yet the company is paid monthly, and as I now know, 11.5 million Ghana cedis as recurrent expenditure, in addition to the parent component of the arrangement, which is the 84 million Ghana cedis. So I would contact the Fourth Estate, and I must say that the Fourth Estate has interviewed me on this matter, and I've proffered my opinions and shared documentation as far as I'm concerned with the Fourth Estate as well. So what I would do is, when we resume in Parliament tomorrow, clearly I will speak to my leadership. I believe the Committee on Education now has a justifiable basis to wheel in the minister to respond to these questions before the committee, and if he refuses to do so, then we would have no choice to file a motion to the Speaker asking for him to be brought to Parliament to answer the questions that I posed, to which he should have answered some 2-3 years ago.
Right. Well, if you stay on the line, Dr. Apaak, we may get some of the answers to your questions right now, because we are joined by the spokesperson for the Ministry of Education, Mr. Kwasi Kwarteng. Mr. Kwarteng, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, my brother. How are you doing?
We are very well, and we're glad you're able to join us.
Thank you.
Let's start from the beginning. So, when this contract was awarded to Busy Internet, can you tell us why the ministry decided to award it on a single source basis?
Thank you very much, and good morning to your listeners, and of course your viewers, particularly with the introduction of social media component, which is doing so well. It is important to understand briefly with a background that the government of Ghana calls as part of the education transformation agenda to be able to make sure that we reposition Ghana's education, particularly within the areas of digitization and technology. In 2019, engage the services of an aggregator whose responsibility was to harmonize aspects of internet service provision. Specifically, you are referring to satellite, fiber, microwave, LTE, and make sure that he brings all these components of internet production together and then supply it to the various schools. So if you look at the arrangement that the ministry had, the ministry secured procurement approval from the PPA for 2 phases of the project. The first in August 2019, and that was to engage the company, then Busy Internet Ghana Limited, for the Wi-Fi provision. And like I indicated, sole responsibility for the company was to, for instance, go to MTN and tell MTN that, look, I will need your services in this school. Go to and tell Click that I am going to need your services in the area of satellite to this school. Go to, for instance, Vodafone and say that I want to extend your cable internet to that school. So the cumulative effect was that they were to apparently extend internet provisions to 717 senior high schools.
Right. Mr. Kwarteng, my question is, why sole sourcing?
So, like I indicated, first of all, it is important to stress that the contract was signed in 2019. I mean, I was not there, but if you look at the background that I'm giving you, that you needed a company to aggregate, more or less, to work with other companies, bring all the other companies that are providing internet services together and make sure that they provide internet services to the school or extend internet services to the school. I mean, certainly you may be looking for a company that may have probably the expertise or the technique to do that within that area.
Is that the grounds
description that I've given?
Is that the grounds on which the single source contract was procured? Is it because Busy Internet was the only company with this expertise?
Obviously, you may have, other companies on the market. But the point I'm trying to say is that when you, as an organization, requires a certain specific service, and in this service, a customized service, and there is an organization that presents a proposal, or of course, if you look at the organization's reviews and works that is capable of doing that, you are more likely to be aligned.
Is that what happened
with that company?
Is that what happened? Did Busy Internet present a proposal?
So I am saying that. Obviously, before you engage any organization, you have to look at what they have to offer.
We want to know what specifically happened with this contract, Mr. Kwarteng.
Come again?
We want to know what specifically happened with this contract. How did it end up being so sourced?
That's why I'm saying that it is important to stress that this contract was signed in 2019. Right. I was not working in 2019.
So
I was not in the ministry.
Okay, so you don't know. So you don't know why it was single sourced.
No, I am saying that. I'm saying that if you look at the nature of the services that the ministry required, it makes sense to, say that it was based on the customized services that the ministry needed at that time, in terms of, an organization that should be able to bring together all this internet service provision. Of course, if you look at, I'm not a procurement expert, but reasons where any organization will engage other organizations within the sole sourcing arrangement largely borders on customization. And if you look at the nature of services as in the aggregation, one can, for instance, then make a point that it was due to the nature of services in terms of
so that's what happened.
Getting that customized services. That is why the ministry at then will think in that line. Of course, I was.
So the ministry did this because they considered this service, providing internet to several sites, to be a customized service. That's why they did it.
So, Kojo, if you heard me right, I initially gave the background that it is not a case of, for instance, MTN sending internet service to, say, a school in Boga.
Okay.
I spoke about the fact of that you needed an organization to aggregate all these services.
Okay, forgive me because of time and the fact that we have a lot to go through and very little time. I think you've made this point already, so we can move on to something else. Why has the ministry been paying for schools that have not been receiving internet? Examples are Accra Academy, Laboni, St. Mary's. These schools have been visited by the Fourth Estate. They have not been receiving internet. but the ministry has been paying Busy Internet for providing internet to these schools. Why?
First of all, we have to understand that if we look at even the terms of the contract, it provides very clearly that payment to Busy Internet is obviously based on the accessible, dedicated internet that is provided to the schools, and of course the schools can access, and not necessarily on a fixed monthly cost. And of course, clearly, service compensation is prorated. What we mean by prorated is that at the end of every month, you only pay for what has been supplied and what you have been able to access and use. So it is not a case that, if you look at, for instance, the PP approval, it requires that the ministry is not supposed to pay more than a certain amount. But at every point, the ministry always reviews the claims that has been submitted by the company. Of course, there is a committee for that. There is also even a monitoring mechanism for that before you are able to review and say that then this is the accessible internet that we're able to access within the mine. Just like ECG. If you don't get power supply within a specific time and is on prepaid basis, you are not going to pay for it. So, for emphasis sake, the ministry does not pay for services that they have not used. It is not a case that, of course, if you look at the, let's say, largely the PP approval and you do not understand it in detail, you may be tempted to believe that the ministry pays, let's say, a fixed cost every month. No. The PP approval was very clear that at the end of the month, for instance, if you look at the second PP approval that was secured, the ministry was not to pay more than or an excess of 6 million Ghana cedis for the internet service that they receive in a month. So what it essentially means is that if at the end of every month you receive an internet service up to, say, 1 million, that's what you're going to pay for.
Right.
For instance, in February 2024, an invoice of 6.4 million was submitted by the company. But after a thorough auditing of the invoice, the ministry ended up paying around 3.6 million after the prorating. So let us understand that there is that prorating requirement.
Yeah, that was all in your statement.
You just don't pay for services.
We saw that in your
Are not
statement.
used.
We saw that in your statement. But Mr. Kwarteng, I'm asking about specific schools like Laboni Senior High School. Laboni Senior High School for 24 months, that's 2 years, had not received any internet service from Busy Internet or Lifted Logistics. But on the list of schools that you have been paying, the list that your ministry provided the Fourth Estate under a right to information request, Laboni Senior High School is there on that list that you are paying for internet there. Meanwhile, it is their own students that have been providing them with internet, not Busy Internet. Bolgatanga girls, 24 months, no internet, but you've been paying them. Peje SHS, 24 months, no internet, you have been paying them. Why?
First of all, could you understand that if you look at even the list of course, the payment schedule that we give to Evans, the Fourth Estate journalist, it doesn't give breakdown of payments to individual schools, and the payment is actually harmonized and paid as a consolidated amount for the services that we've received. It's just like, for instance, if ECG bills all schools in Ghana and say that at the end of the month government is supposed to pay 6 million. We don't pay on individual basis. So I will be very surprised how he came to that conclusion. 24 months, a school has not been getting internet and we are paying. Because the payment was not in specific reference to individual schools. It was a consolidated amount paid for the dedicated internet that was accessible within that particular month. So I will be very surprised for anybody to lay a claim that a school A did not get internet service and we pay them. Emphasis sake, the ministry don't pay for schools that do not get internet. And of course, if we want to even go into the details of it, if you go and stand in any classroom or say in front of the gate of it or the entrance of any school and attempt to get internet, you may not get it because that was not part of the terms of the contract. As of now, until probably government expands the internet coverage to the entire scope of the schools, these contracts only limited internet access to the administration block, the ICT center, and the school library.
We
so
know
it
this.
Is not a case.
Yeah, we know this. I mean, at a rate of an average rate of about 84,000 cedis per site, this is what you did. We know that, but we are asking you, the list that you gave to the journalists had schools that you have been paying consistently. Meanwhile, these schools are reporting that for 24 months they have not had internet. You are denying that, right? You are saying that there are no such schools that have not had internet for 24 months, right?
No, I'm not saying that. I am saying that it is. You see, Kojo, I'm not running away from responsibility. That and of course, I'm not also running away from the reality. I am very much aware that Busy Internet failed to pay their mother organization, Click, in terms of providing even the internet in the areas of satellite to these schools. So, of course, I understand that there is even a genuine problem. But the point that I'm making is that those institutions that do not have internet service, we don't pay those institutions.
Right.
Because if you look at the terms of the contract,
right.
It's very clear that if the organization or the company is not able to provide internet for up to 15 days, we even do not pay anything.
Okay, that's also a point you've made already. I literally have seconds to go. I just need a yes or no quickly on this. At the time you were giving them this contract, did you see certificates from SNIT and GRA before you gave this contract to Busy Internet?
I will have to verify that and confirm for you. But I would be very surprised if indeed TPA will go ahead and approve a document without seeing a GRA certificate.
Well,
and of course,
all right. Well, surprising things have happened before in this republic. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Kwasi Kwarteng. Obviously, this conversation cannot end here. We have to continue at our earliest convenience.